Hey everyone, welcome to Sportsbet Daily at oddsmarket.com. We're off to Flushing Meadow where a tennis major hard court season is upon us. We're going to start off with Snize and James, have a look at the WTP. Serena Williams last year, meltdown with Osaka. Boys, do we think that Serena's going to win it this year?
Snize, I think I should let you start with that one. It's your area.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Happy to be here. Talking some more Flushing Meadows US Open. And I do not think that Serena Williams wins this again. Last year was an epic meltdown. And she made the headlines for other reasons than her tennis play, with emotional outbursts, cussing at the referee, and really stealing Naomi Osaka's moment in the limelight there. Serena has lost 3 straight now, major finals. And if she isn't injured, which she's been a lot, it's been her nerves that have become her undoing as she's chasing this 24th historic major title behind Margaret Court. So I don't think that Serena will win this year. I've had my eyes on a few others, as we have seen on the earlier shows here. So no Serena for me.
Okay, James, what about the sentiment towards Serena? Do you think that half want her to get to number 24 and half want to see the demise of a champion?
Yeah, so I think we saw this with Novak to a lesser degree when he had his off period a couple of years ago. And what you tend to see is the players who felt invincible for a long time will slowly start to show the kinks in the armor. Players will start to play better against them. They'll start to believe more against them. I mean, we saw this with Halep against Serena at Wimbledon. She just came out a completely different player to how she'd played against her in the past, and took her to bits. And as Snize said, it's a combination of fitness issues, but there's a lot of psychological issues in there. And I mean, I have to say, I've always felt like Serena is a little bit difficult mentally. She's not someone who is always all there. She normally gets away with it because she's so good, but as she gets older, as she gets a little bit less clinical, you can see it starting to be more and more of an issue, certainly. Yeah.
I mean, there's always that thing with top sports people or sports persons, is like that genius stroke mad. I mean, they have to tilt right on the very edge, and she's certainly done that, and she's not the first. I mean, we go back to McEnroe, we go back to Connors, and tennis just seems to be one of them sports that it makes you and it breaks you. Snize, who's impressed you so far in the first round?
I'm going to have to go ahead and say Aryna Sabalenka. She was faced with a nightmare matchup against fellow compatriot and Belarusian Victoria Azarenka, former major winner, and she looked incredible. She's just combining her natural upside with aggressive, clean ground strokes, powerful ground strokes, with some more controlled aggressions, really reeling in the unforced errors, which have often become her undoing. And she's one of the most talented players on tour, and one of the players with the most untapped potential. And if she's going to play as she did in that first round match, she's definitely one to look out for here.
James, I looked at the early odds. I look at Sloane Stephens, former champion here, at 34. Not 34 years of age, 34 on the odds. How is that? How does that even happen?
It's always the case when players start winning, or when a player wins a tournament, a Grand Slam, and to a lesser degree when they win one of the tournaments leading up to a Grand Slam or any of the major events in the year, people take notice of that. And I think the bookies react very defensively with the odds because they know that people are just going to think back to that, that first thing that comes to mind is the fact that they've already won a slam or they've already won an event recently. And so they hype up how likely it is that player is actually to win, when in reality, as you're kind of implying here, that's probably too short. That's not really the kind of price that would make a lot of sense to me in that context.
So you don't fancy that she's going to be able to repeat winning in Flushing Meadow?
I believe that Stephens lost in the first round.
She's out already.
So, this is, very much no. I wouldn't be taking that price now, and I wouldn't have taken it before. She had a tricky opening round, and even if she'd got through that opening round, as you were implying, I just think that price is overly influenced by historic form. That's not really been backed up well enough recently.
Snize, how did your tips go in the first round?
Went pretty well. Started the first day with a 3-3 result, and ended the second day with a 5-1 result. So 8-4 across round one. So doing well, got in some decent profit, and now we look onwards to round two. Hopefully, can keep the good form up.
Who's your top tips for round two?
Round two right now, we have a bet that's going to go in action hopefully today. It's been raining a lot. I don't know if that's resolved yet, but it's the under 26.5 games in Daniil Medvedev versus Hugo Dellien. Dellien is a clay court specialist who loves other surfaces. He's played, I think, 21 matches in total. He's lost 16 of them. He was really lucky to get through Kwon, who had to retire with an injury, and Medvedev has been trucking lesser opposition lately. Won against Gunneswaran in straight sets without any problems, and he's a fringe top 100 player and pretty decent on hard court, so I don't think that Dellien has a chance there. So that should go underway here in a few hours. So that's my favorite for the round two.
James, what about the women? Round two, who you got your eyes on?
So I think I actually felt like the men's was surprisingly underdoggy this round, whereas the women's less than I expected, perhaps. But one bet that I think is very solid based on both statistics and intuitively thinking about how the two players are playing now is to back Andreescu to basically take Flipkins to bits. And you can do that either by what I did in the article that I've sent, is under 19 games. Because if you look at that statistically, it's landed about 72% of the time for the two players in similar situations, meaning that when they're priced in a similar price range. And you can see the gulf in class between the two of them. They're opposite ends of their career, with Flipkins coming towards the end, whereas Andreescu is right at the beginning. Of course, she's passed all expectations so far on the WTA, and in particular winning Toronto recently. So she's very much a player that I'd want to be on side with. Whereas Flipkins, who can be dangerous, she's got the kind of game that can be dangerous, but she's really not been able to put it together against the better players recently, or really ever in her career. She's had moments of brilliance, but it does not look like one of those is coming anytime soon. So yeah, I took under 19 games at 1.88 with Pinnacle, which either that or a similar underline, or even a much more aggressive underline if you wanted to. All of those are valid options for opposing Flipkins there.
One Brit to another. Jo Konta, has she got the game to win a major on hard court?
Yes, I think she has the game. I think as with Murray, and as seems to be the case with a lot of the Brits, it's the head that I'm questioning more. I think Konta has the weaponry. I think she has the class. It's just that she has never really seemed to be able to string it together in quite the right way. She's never been able to have quite the right amount of belief to take her through a tournament, sadly. But maybe this will be a time. You never know. She can always come firing out.
Snize, before we go on to the men, although you've already touched upon it, who wins the ladies for you?
So before the tournament started, I went pretty confident with two women. One of them was the woman that James touched upon, Bianca Andreescu, and the other one is Madison Keys. So starting with Andreescu, she has the highest winning percentage on the entire tour on hard court over the last 12 months. She's won Toronto. She won Indian Wells earlier in the year with another miracle run. And when she gets going, she's just been unstoppable, really. She has everything. She has the serve, she has the return, she has the powerful ground stroke, she has the movement, the defensive skills, the variety. She has the mental strength and fortitude to come through when the going gets tough. So she has all the pieces, and she has a very good chance. And Madison Keys, she's the 2017 finalist, the 2018 semifinalist, and she's been able to reel in her unforced errors and play with controlled aggression, which we haven't really seen before from the powerful American. And she won Cincinnati in the lead up to this tournament. looked great in her first round, still not going for too much. And when she's playing like this, focused, she's a great bet. And I just realized I actually forgot to mention my women's bet. So just real quickly, I am high on Coco Gauff. I was initially going against her really in the first round match. She was facing Anastasia Potapova, a really talented young player. I thought she was going to struggle there, which she did initially. She lost the first set, but she really dug deep, the 15-year-old, and came back from a set down to score that win. Timea Babos, the Hungarian, she had to qualify to get here, but she isn't really the force of old, the 26-year-old. She's lost a lot of power since a few years ago when she was ranked 25. She's ranked 112 now. She's lost some speed as well. She's only 13-12 on hard courts this year, and I think the young American, backed by an eruptuous crowd, should be able to get the win there. So at 1.67, I bet Gauff to win.
Okay, James, give me your idea of the women's champ.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Snize, really. I mean, I think it's difficult to find a particularly compelling line outside of the top sort of like 25% of the market. We had Whale Capper on the other day who suggested Collins at 200-1, which I think was a great bet at the time. But really beyond that, I think there are a few players lower down in the field, Andreescu and Keys probably being the best two, who definitely have a good chance of upsetting Serena, Halep, the very top of the field. And especially given the general sense that Serena's in decline and that I think she's tending not to be in her best headspace now, I think taking one of those two makes a lot of sense. My only issue with Keys is the difference of conditions from Cincinnati. As Snize pointed out, she dealt with that fine in the first round. It'd be interesting to see what happens when she has a bit more pressure on, and I think it'll be a very interesting quarter between her and Pliskova. But I would personally be more inclined towards Andreescu, towards thinking that she's probably going to have a very good chance against Halep, and then going forward in the rest of the tournament. So that would probably be my pick, Andreescu.
Is there any chance that with the bracket the way it is, that they could actually meet in the final and you could have them both?
I've actually forgotten. Are they in the opposite half?
Yeah, they're in the opposite half, so they can meet up in the final. That's the dream scenario.
Exactly. How big are your smiles going to be if we do this show next week and they're just sitting there like, who cares?
Yeah, there you go.
Who cares?
Like,
yeah, we love that. Okay, let's go on to the men's. We got to start Djokovic and Federer. Federer loses a set, unlike him. Nadal sitting on his own on the other side. Anyone break into them top three?
So I don't think that they will, sadly. Again, we talked about this with Whale Capper on the show last time. Everybody, I think, instinctively at this point just wants something different to happen. But it probably is going to be one of the big three, and it's probably going to be Nadal and Djokovic would be my guess, making the final. So I think Federer is the one that's looked the most vulnerable comfortably, both because the US Open is it's never been his best event. It tends to be a bit slower than than Australian and Wimbledon, and Federer is always best in the quicker events. And I think also it's really hard to underestimate how much heartbreak he might be still dealing with from Wimbledon. I mean, this is Federer, so you never really know quite how he's feeling. But to be I said this last time, to be the first man since 1948 to have match points in the Wimbledon final and lose is horrible. So, yeah, to me, I think he's the one that's the most opposable of the big three. I wouldn't really want to go against the other two, especially not with the players that were being offered at the minute.
Okay, Snize, when we look at these, the men's, you obviously mentioned the top three. Who is the best? Or who is going to break into that top three and create the upset? Who's the next man up?
So yeah, as James has said, that we really just have had such a long period now of complete and utter dominance by the big three or the big four when Andy Murray was fit. And it's really just been extremely tough for any of the new next-gen players to really break in. Alexander Zverev was one. He was hailed as the new big thing who was going to win and contend for major tournaments. He's just not been able to deal with it. Stefanos Tsitsipas is another one. He's not been able to either. Dominic Thiem, a bit older, has been able to compete really well at Roland Garros, not really anywhere else. But the one I think will be the next man to break in is Daniil Medvedev. The Russian has really taken gigantic strides forwards in his development over this last year or so, and very impressively went on a 3 straight weeks of 3 straight finals run just prior to this tournament here. And he's really been carrying himself and playing like a seasoned pro. And I think that with his game, has a lot of upside. Big serve, big ground strokes, sound defensively, but he can also attack offensively. And he just has been playing fantastic tennis. So I think that Medvedev might be the next one to break through there.
Is he valued to get to the final this year, though, James?
So this is difficult. I think if he keeps playing the way he's been playing, then yes, certainly. He beat Novak coming into this tournament. He beat Novak at Cincinnati. Novak is the high seed in the whole tournament and in his quarter. So you have to think he has chances there. The big issue always, of course, is the format change. When you go from 3 to 5 sets, as we've seen with, say, Alex Zverev is a very clear example of this, it can really change how well the player is able to translate that. So that would be my worry with Medvedev, is that if he can't quite keep that level up over 5 sets in a best-of-5 format, especially in slightly slower conditions after 3 heavy weeks leading into that, that could be difficult. But if he can, then there's no reason why he shouldn't be competing. He's certainly going to, I think he'll very much be wanting to give Djokovic a run for his money in that quarterfinal.
James, who have you got your eyes on for the men's second round?
Okay, so there's a few matches. The second round is historically not quite as good as the first for underdogs. We saw in the first round this year a lot of underdog winners, some of them more surprising than others. And I think in the second round, we're likely to see that come in a little bit. I doubt we're going to see quite so many underdogs. But having said that, there are definitely a few prices which really stand out to me as probably offering some value or some opportunities. So the first one that really comes to mind to me is Kyrgios against Zhang. Zhang is the French youngster who came through the first round here quite impressively against Maia. And he's very hit and miss as a player. He's very French as a player. He's very fiery, but can also be pretty dreadful and kind of just all over the place. And that's not bad when you're taking someone at 8-1, because really you're just betting on them having a very good day enough of the time to compete there. So, I think if you can get those kind of prices on Zhang against Kyrgios, I think that's a decent bet. Probably the second one that I was more interested in from having I suppose a safer bet, if you like, would be the match between Andujar against Sonego. And this match is basically a contrast of styles. You have a big hitter, powerful server with Sonego, and much more of a defensive, reactive player in Andujar. And I think typically, I can see why they've got Sonego quite short here. They've got him at 1.4, which I was surprised to see after having watched Andujar playing his first round. He was very impressive against Edmund. I feel like he is not. He's being judged here on not old stats, but on he's having a bit of a lag, because I think he's clearly been better on recent times on hard courts than these odds are implying, and he's 3.5. But I think given how consistently Sonego has managed to win his matches when he's the favorite and when he generally should be winning the matches, I'm more inclined to take the overline in this match, because I think even if he does lose, I think it's very likely that he will lose in over the line. So with something like this, you can get, I think, over 37.5 at close to evens, 1.97, 1.95. I think that's a good bet, because I would expect that I would probably expect Sonego to win, but I would expect it to be close. I'd expect it to be tight, and I'd expect Andujar to really push him for at least a set, and probably to keep the sets quite tight as well.
You mentioned about Wang being 8-1 against Kyrgios. Is there not value in taking Wang with a start, with a handicap?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points here. The first one is Kyrgios is not he's a player that's basically very hot and cold. They both are, which means that I think on a lot of days Kyrgios will come out and will basically just serve too well, or Huang will just not be good enough. In that kind of situation, you're not the bet if you take a bet on say over sets or the game's handicap or something like that, you look a bit silly, and more importantly, it defeats the point of the bet, which is generally that you think it's very consistently going to play out in a certain way. Whereas in this context, I don't consistently think it's going to play out in a certain way. I just think that it's very unlikely to me that 8-1 doesn't offer value. I think that's too long. I think Kyrgios is likely to have a bad day or hang a very good day. I mean, he's got a lot of upside, so he could just have a very good day. He beat Verdasco at the French Open priced at, I think, 7 earlier this year. So he has the game to beat these top guys. It just depends on whether or not he can bring it together on the day. So I'm more comfortable with the longer odds.
Snize, you mentioned Medvedev. You've said I think you said it was under 26.5. What other ones have you got for me?
Correct. So moving on to matches that are being played tomorrow. I've been looking at one in particular, and it's Fernando Verdasco versus Hyung Sung. And Hyung Sung may be a familiar name for a few of you, because he was a really, really big player not too long ago, just about a year ago, actually. The 23-year-old won the ATP, the newly inaugurated tournament, ATP Next Gen Finals in 2017, and he made it all the way to the Australian Open semifinals in January of 2018, losing to Roger Federer there. He peaked at world number 19, but has since gone off the rail completely with extreme back injuries. He's had a lot of problems, been off tour a lot. He's recently just come back from a 6-month absence, and he's played a couple of challengers. He won the Chengdu Challenger now in China, but he hasn't really been tested. He has faced mostly mid-level challenger tennis level opposition. And he really struggled badly, I think, against Ernesto Escobedo, who is another one of those mid-tier challenger players when it comes to his level. He had to take the full 5 sets to come through there in the first round. And it's just clear that he just still isn't back to the level he was at before all these back problems. Fernando Verdasco, on the other hand, isn't really at its best on hard court, doesn't have great hard court form, I wouldn't say, and he may be 35 years old. But you'll always get a solid performance out of Verdasco, especially in the majors where he tends to raise his game a bit. Shung is just still far from his peak level, and still the veteran Verdasco is priced at a very generous 2.15 in my mind. He shouldn't be this big of an underdog with a 23-year-old struggling and still far from his best. So I went with Verdasco to win there. My other bet, I'm actually going to have to go a bit against James here. I think that Lorenzo Sonego gets the job done, and gets the job done in a convincing manner versus Pablo Andujar. He's one of the most extreme clay court specialists on tour. Though he's ranked world number 62, almost all of those points exclusively come from the red dirt. The 33-year-old, he has a 38-83 losing record on hard courts throughout his career, and he's gone 7-24 over the last 5 years on the surface. He's never made it beyond round 2 at this tournament in 7 attempts, and I think that though he did play well, his win in round 1 of Cal Edmund was mostly down to the Brit being absolutely horrid and woeful and playing well below his best. If he was playing at his peak level, that would have been a match he should have won quite convincingly. Lorenzo Sonego, on the other hand, he's been ascending steadily this year. He's also at his best on clay, but he has shown that he can translate well to other surfaces. He won the grass title in Antalya, Turkey this year. And he has a big game, a big serve, powerful ground strokes that I think they can translate well to hard courts. He also won the only meeting, or they have 2, but the only meeting this year between these two on clay, and he won it 6-3, 6-2 extremely convincingly. He also has a 16% edge in the whole break statistics on hard courts, and I think that Sonego is just a better player. He's the better player on this surface, and I expect him to take advantage. So minus 5.5 games, and I got it at evens.
Nice. We'll stay with you though, Snize. Just wrap me up. Who wins the men's?
I think it's going to be Novak Djokovic in the end, the world number one. He's won 3 out of the last 4 majors. He is the reigning champion. He does have a tough draw, and I can understand people who say that Rafa Nadal has a great chance, which he has. But I just think that Novak will still reign supreme at this venue in the end. So I think Novak defeats Rafa Nadal in the final in a really tough match.
Okay, James, give me your winner.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really be interesting here, I'm afraid. I think it's Novak. I think Rafa certainly has his chances. It depends what level Novak brings. He tends to bring his best at slams, and he's one of those players that just seems to win even when you feel like he's, probably shouldn't be beating one of the top 3 at that moment. He still often finds a way, as he did at Wimbledon. So yeah, it would probably be Djokovic, to be honest.
Excellent, lads. Good luck with your picks. Thanks for in-depth. Absolutely top draw. Hope the weather stays away and you get all of your games concluded. And we'll speak again soon. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks
Cheers,
a lot.
Snize. Cheers,
Thanks
James.
for having us.
Take care. Cheers. That was Snize and James. Snize going for Novak, James going for Djokovic, and Flash going for Djorkaeff. Typical. Never mind. Anyway, we're going to go on. UFC. If we're talking UFC, then we've got to be talking Dave and Jason. Coming up with strawweight championships, we've got welterweights, and we'll be looking forward to the big one next weekend. Jace, how are you doing, mate?
Better. I'm going back there like immediately when we're done. But other than that, I'm doing well, my friend.
We're going to wait for Dave Betts to join us as well. But Jason, you're okay?
Yeah, I'm hanging in.
Good man, good man. Well, before Dave gets here, do you want to just throw a little bit of how excited you are for the next big one next week?
Oh, Khabib Nurmagomedov and Dustin Poirier. It's going to be phenomenal. Khabib Nurmagomedov is undefeated. His wrestling is better than anybody in the history of that division. Dustin Poirier, on the other hand, has some of the best boxing that division has ever seen. To me, it's going to come down to, can Dustin Poirier knock Khabib Nurmagomedov out while he's coming in for takedowns? And I'm not sure he can. I thought Conor McGregor would be able to piece him up while Nurmagomedov came in for his takedowns, but he wasn't able to. Khabib has an iron chin. You can't knock the man out. And if he's willing to eat a punch, then he'll do whatever it takes to get a takedown. So I think the odds will have to be really big for me to take a shot on Dustin Poirier. Right now, he's like plus 300, and it's not big enough for me to take it. But at the same time, I'm really not looking to lay that big a price on Khabib. So I'm going to dig into the props next week and see if I can find a prop there. As of right now, though, I'm off the side.
Jace, is this game, do you think that this fight is actually a lot tighter than the odds are suggesting then?
I do. It's tough because I think Dustin Poirier, what he did against Max Holloway, nobody thought he would be able to do. But Max Holloway stepped up in weight, and he wasn't a true lightweight fighter. He really fights at 145. Khabib is a natural lightweight that fights at 155 that might even be able to go up in weight if he really had to. So I just don't know if Dustin's power, which he has, could touch that chin, because there's only been one fighter that's even been able to knock Khabib down with a punch, and that was Michael Johnson. And it was a bit of a fluky punch. So I think that if Khabib gets a hold of him, the fight's over. And it's just going to come down to, can Dustin Poirier knock him out while he's trying to get a hold of him? That's what it comes down to.
Wow, okay. Well, that's one end of the spectrum. Let's go to the other end. Strawweight Championship, Jessica Andrade against Weili Zhang. Andrade, 20-6 record, minus 175. Weili Zhang, 19-1, plus 155. How does a fighter have a 19-1 record and yet's a dog?
Yeah, I think the world might be sleeping on Weili Zhang. In that strawweight title fight, I picked against Jessica Andrade when she fought Rose Namajunas because I wasn't uber impressed with anyone that she had beat in 3.5 years, to be honest. The only fighter that she had fought that I had held in high regard was Joanna, and she lost that fight. And in addition to that, she didn't even impress me with the way she beat the fighters that she had beaten the last 3.5 years. So I picked against Jessica Andrade in her last title fight. I picked Namajunas to beat her because she was light on her feet. She was a great striker. But the only thing I was worried about in that title fight was strength. And what we saw in that fight was Rose Namajunas dominates Jessica Andrade for 2 rounds. But Andrade gets a hold of her, picks her up, drops her on her head, and knocks her out cold. It was a very rare thing that happened in that fight, and it really doesn't happen often. Jessica Andrade is only 5'2", right? She packs an incredible punch. She has a solid base of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's a physical brute for how small she is, and she's got massive strength for the division. She's predictable, though. Even though she's got 7 knockouts, 7 submission wins, 6 wins by decision, she's well-rounded, but she is predictable. She's constantly moving forward. She first looks to knock out her opponents. If she can't knock them out, she looks to take them down and end them on the mat. Her pressure is not overwhelming, though, because it's a slow and prodding pressure. On the flip side, I think there are a lot of people that are sleeping on Weili Zhang. She comes into the fight 19-1, and like Jessica Andrade, her opponents have not impressed me. But unlike Jessica Andrade, I'm very impressed with the way that she has beaten her opponents down. I think her last 2 opponents in particular were perfect opponents to fight in preparation for this fight. Both Jessica Aguilar and Tisha Torres were small wrestle grapplers that pack a hard punch, and that's exactly what Jessica Andrade does. Andrade is a more powerful striker than they are, but the game plan that Zhang had against Aguilar and Torres should work well for the most part against Jessica Andrade. Zhang has some of the same attributes that Rose Namajunas had. She's light on her feet. She has great movement. She cuts angles well. She's a very technical striker. But what she has in spades that Rose did not have is her strength. At the very least, she is as strong as Jessica Andrade. And at most, she might have a strength advantage. So I think that's one of the main reasons why she wins this fight. If she doesn't get knocked out, she wins the fight. She's had 20 professional fights. She's never been finished. And if she avoids a finish here, then I think she has the skills to walk out of the cage with the victory. As far as a bet for the fight, I think the single best angle in the fight is fight to start round 4 at 1.64. I think both these women are tough enough to take it past the first 3 rounds and into the championship rounds. So that's the bet that I've placed on her. I think the fight will start round 4. And my opinion on who wins, I think Zhang could win the fight. So I wouldn't hate anybody at taking her at plus 165 or 2.65 on the decimal. But my bet is going to be, I really think both these girls are tough enough that the 4th round will start in this fight.
For those that don't really know UFC, Jace, just quickly, how long do the straw weights, how many rounds is there in the championship fight?
A normal fight is 3 rounds. A championship fight is 5 rounds. So basically, these girls just have to get past the first 3 rounds. If you hear the bell for the 4th round, then you're a winner.
Okay, so we'll go with that 1.64 to start round 4. What about Zaleski dos Santos and Jinglang Li? I mean, this one seems a little bit closer on paper, but not as in the prices. Minus 280 dos Santos, plus 240 Li.
You know, these two guys have been in the UFC long enough that we pretty much know what these fighters are. Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos was very impressive against Curtis Millender at UFC Fight Night 146. He's a devastating striker. He could knock anybody out with anything he throws. He's not incredibly technical, but he doesn't have to be because his power makes up for it. He doesn't really tire that easily. His cardio is solid. He's got solid footwork. He cuts a good angle. He's got a solid chin. And his wrestling is very underrated. And Saturday morning, he's going to fight the Leech, Li Jingliang. He's a great striker in his own right. His career is always going to have a black mark on it because he blatantly eye gouged Jake Matthews, which is terrible. But aside from that, he's a solid striker. He's got a good counter-striking game. He's got great cardio. And because of that cardio, he sets a grueling pace with unrelenting pressure. His wrestling game is phenomenal. His top control is really good. But he has one major problem in his fights. He gets hurt badly in round 1 of fights. For whatever reason, when Jingliang starts a fight, his striking defense is non-existent. And he has been starched multiple times in the first round. It doesn't always cost him the fight because he recovers and sometimes he rallies to win the fight. But it's a big problem. Now, I think he has a path to victory here. If he uses that ridiculous pace he has and he chains takedown attempts together, he's capable of taking Zaleski dos Santos down and winning an ugly fight. The problem is his defensive striking is a sieve, and that's why the betting odds reflect that. He gets hit with way too many bombs from people to make me think that he's going to avoid the power of dos Santos. And if he gets hit with a couple of those bombs, Zaleski dos Santos will put him down. Like, he won't be able to recover and rally to win the fight. Okay. From a betting perspective, here's the problem. Dos Santos is like 1.32 right now, I think. I think those odds are too high. So I have not personally made a bet on this fight yet because I'm waiting for the betting market to drop lines on props. But what I will be looking to see is what will Zaleski dos Santos be to win by knockout in round 1? What will Zaleski dos Santos be to win by knockout in round 2? Those two props specifically, because of how bad Lee's defensive striking is early on in these fights. If the odds are good enough, I might make a play. But outside of me waiting to see what the price is on those props, and I'll check out other ones, but those two specifically, I have not made a bet on this fight yet. I do think dos Santos wins the fight. I just don't like the odds.
Okay, before I let you go, I can't let you go without giving us what's your banker, what's your best bet coming up that you're really looking forward to?
This event is going to be fight to start round 4 in the Jessica Andrade title fight. Events coming up in the future. I think I've talked about her many times. I love her to death. She's the greatest woman fighter to ever fight in the octagon. Amanda Nunes has a fight coming up in a month or two. against Jermaine Durandamy. Right now, she's minus 300. Okay, I'm gonna slam that. I'll probably have somewhere around $6,000 to win 2,000 on her. But the props aren't released yet. But I'll be looking for Amanda Nunes by knockout. Whatever that is, my guess is it'll be around minus 130. If I were people, I would be looking to bet that prop with about as much money as you're willing to spend in your bankroll, because I just don't see anybody right now in the UFC that comes close to her. She destroys everybody she fights, and she will destroy this girl.
Good way to finish that, Jace. Loved it. Sorry we didn't have Dave. Obviously technical difficulties there, but Jason more than made up for it. Look out for Amanda Nunes. Can't wait. Don't wish your life away. There's plenty more before that. And remember, Jessica Andrade going into round 4 at 1.64. Jason, until next time, I'll see you soon.
Thank you, brother.
Top man, you go well. So that was UFC. Remember, we had the US Open men's. Was Djokovic for both the lads. The women, they've gone for Keys and they've gone for Andreescu. For me, I really couldn't pick it. I think Nadal's going to be there or thereabouts, but listen, I'm no expert. I'm just asking the questions. But tomorrow, I come into my own. Nat's not here for Premier League punters, so I'm joined by Martin Green, and we'll have Alex Classic Tips. Tough weekend this weekend in the Premier League, so don't guess. Tune in to us tomorrow. See you later.